Hello everybody. I'm doing the beginning at the end and you'll see why. I set the camera up on a shelf above me and I had been a little scared to do that. I had to move quite a bit of stuff, but I did manage to get an angle that worked. So I hope you enjoy the video, and I'll probably do a little bit of narrating through it. So enjoy. I love you all, and please stay with us to the end. Hello, how are you doing? This is Glenda with Fralins and Friends, and I welcome you all. You cannot see my face because I've set up a different angle, and I don't want to mess with them because I'm afraid if I do, I'll come out having trouble resetting the angle. But I will make an appearance at some point. Probably right before I put a sketch on here. That doesn't mean that I'm going to completely follow it. It's an idea. I-D-E-A-R. E-R. What I'm going to do is kind of a memory from the Flint Hills, where I grew up. A combination of that and some scenes that I saw, some photographs that I looked up. Right now, the sketching looks like a mess. I'm not going to make any excuse for that. But, okay. First thing I'm going to go for is the grain. Okay. I'm going to start off with painting some green into the hills, and yeah, I'm not going to make you watch me mess with this brush for very long because I kind of got, this isn't working the way I want to. So, but I had to give it a try, I guess. But you can see the top of the hill there at least. But it does not give a grassy effect, so won't be long here. Where are you? I'm going to get tired of this. But yes, I am doing this from memories of years and years of living under those Flint Hills, and many, many more years of going back to visit them. Well, actually, I went to visit my family, but they lived there. So there, yeah, I got that big brush now, and I'm getting more of a stroke that looks more like it's got some grassiness to it. Because I don't know, just paint something a flat green just doesn't seem to me to make the best looking grass. So I don't even expect to get this done tonight at all. But I imagine you expected that. I did get a couple more requests today. One is for me to do a poem. I can do that anytime, pretty much, so I'll see if I can get one that's appropriate for the theme, or one that I can just do, one or two or three that I can just do as a poetry reading. I'd really love to do a poem about the Flint Hills. It's almost like we were way out in the sticks, but we didn't feel like we were losing anything not being in or closer to town. At least I didn't. It was almost like it wasn't a fantasy world at all, but it could almost seem that way. Probably will if I might kind of do that with this. Make it almost seem not really like fantasy, but just a magical place. One of God's most beautiful places to grow up. I can't tell you how many times I rode my horse through these Flint Hills. His muscle, the muscles he developed were not at all like a lot of other horses, because in order to get up some of these hills, he had to build up muscles on his hindquarters, which he was born in them, so that wasn't a bit hard for him to do. We had a mare, and so most of our horses were born of her and a stud that my grandfather had. They just lived up the road from us. We got in trouble once in a while because we would take off up the road. We'd walk up to Grandma and Grandpa's. And Grandma and Grandpa didn't know we didn't have permission. Finally, they got to the point where they would call and ask if we had permission to disappear. There was one time, it was so fun. Dad pulled out, well, Grandpa had a collection of old yokes, not really yokes, but those things they put around a horse's neck and attach reins, and then they would attach a whole system, and it would be and like on the shows they show you the way they're hooked up to the westerns, how they're hooked up. When the cowboy would jump off of the wagon onto the gear to slow the horses that were running wild because their reins got dropped or something. Anyway, we didn't have that problem. But they brought out a little buggy. I think maybe my dad and his sisters had used it as a kid, but it was so fun. It had one seat, and it was just a little two-wheel cart. Had one seat, and we would sit on there, and we would take the reins, and we always had just the one horse on there. Betty was the one. Yeah, she was our mare, and anyway, she was a lot of fun, unless she didn't like what you were doing. Then she might decide to stop suddenly and dump you over her head. Which she did that to my brother once, and I think to one of my sisters. I'm going to work on this portion tonight. Oh, I already have some of that. Now, of course, they're called the Flint Hills for a reason. Because of Flint. And generally the flint that we find, there had been rock hounds had been going out there and rummaging through those hills for arrowheads and other Indian artifacts. So those pretty much, I mean, they didn't do it without permission, but a lot of those artifacts were pretty much gone. We did find an arrowhead or two, but yeah, like most of the country, it had been Indians' territory at once, either traveling through or camping there. Sorry, I'm picking up a few brush bristles. I will be adding, especially to here, I'm going to add some boulders. A lot of them will be flat because that's the way a lot of them were where we grew up. There are a lot of evergreen trees, but there were also a lot of other kinds of trees. I want this to be something where you can look out over the valley, which you could very easily do. You could stand on the edge of one of those Flint Hills. Dad would take his camera up there. He liked to do photography. And he would take his camera up there and just take a picture of everything down over the home place from the house to the river. I'm not going to put a house in this one. I want it to be kind of purely, kind of more like it would have been back then, before it was settled, I guess. Okay, I had some bare spots in here. I decided I'd come in here and do some narrating. I'm going back over with a lighter color of green. I tend to like to do that because I don't want it really blended. I want it to kind of have more of a feeling of what real grass would be. It would have more than one tone to it. So sometimes it works. Now, I'm trying to decide what I'm doing now. Evidently getting ready to do something else. But yeah, living here or living down there on that in that valley just below those foothills, there was I mean, you could have all kinds of adventure. You could get up there in the trees and the hills and nobody, you just get away from everybody. They wouldn't see you. And I mean, they're actually kind of in my blood considering that we ate gooseberries from there and we had we'd go through hikes. Dad once he found some wild strawberries, so we had some wild strawberries. And then of course our cattle all grazed up in there. So literally, there's some of the Flint Hills in my blood. So they are you are what you eat kind of thing. Anyway, I'm getting ready to. I think I'm getting ready to paint the river in. At least just get started on it. But well, of course, in a painting, it's going to look closer than it actually was because We don't have that kind of space on a canvas. But we just really felt enchanted sometimes. Not everything went well. We had our fights and we had our problems here and there. I mean, what family doesn't? There was 6 of us kids. And so not every day was pleasant, but we got through. Looks like I'm not going to get the river in this one. We'll do that next time.